No doubt we have a real crisis, and a crisis that has millions of people fearful of their next bill, but daily we have thousands more pushed into that too, and that we're not recognising officially. We have hundreds of thousands officially recognised as living in energy poverty, but we have hundreds and thousands more that, I say, are not recognised. By the end of the crisis, without action from this government, we may have a majority of citizens either in energy poverty and experiencing real hardship and keeping on the heating light and making the choices about eating or heating. So there's no doubt a historic crisis, and the deputies are right to put a motion, but their solutions are unreal. The main demand of this motion will do nothing for ordinary people suffering from that crisis. It does hint at solutions of a windfall tax. It hints at a solution and talks of a national retrofitting programme and decoupling of gas, etc. And they do point to the example of other states, quite rightly, of successful renewable energy strategies. But I have the feeling that these demands are an afterthought to the real business that's being pushed here, and that's the interests of fossil fuel companies, specifically Providence Resources and the jewel in their crown of Barry Rowe. It is saying never waste a good crisis. And that saying is well used in this House, but this is a classic example of it. There are many reasons for the current crisis and the crisis that affects people at this moment, but it is not a crisis of energy supply, it is a crisis of energy pricing. And the one thing which has absolutely nothing, zilch, to do with this crisis is the inability or delay in Providence Resources or any other oil company extracting oil or gas anywhere from the waters of this state. We could tear up the climate emergency measures that we voted for and tell Providence, Shell, BP or anybody else to go dig their wells, sink wells all over this island, and it would do nothing to deal with the energy crisis we have and the prices that people are facing, having to pay on their bills. There's two reasons I say that, and the first one is the licensing terms that this state gives to the exploration for oil and gas. And it means that, depending on when licences were issued, the companies will most likely pay no tax on their fines and no royalties to the state. This state has had a policy of giving away effectively the state's natural resources and reducing any potential tax take from oil and gas. Corrib, like others, are able to claim back the full costs of setting up their field and pay no tax on their production. The licensing terms have been labelled the most generous of any state in the world, and that was under the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael philosophy, and it remains so as regards to renewable energy, which is mainly in the hands of private companies. Secondly, the terms of these licences also mean that any company which does find oil or gas is under no obligation to sell it back to this state. They can sell it to where they see fit. An oil or gas find in Ireland does not mean an oil or gas sale to the Irish state. It means Providence or anybody else find oil or gas, they may sell it to the state, but the state will be charged at international market rates. In short, finding oil and gas anywhere will do nothing to address the crisis we face. And I would just like to find out from the deputies what they think of the fact that Shannon LNG paid over $4 million to Kerry County Council, and if the LNG fails, will it be returned to Shannon LNG? In the motion, the deputies make reference to domestic oil and gas and how it would have a lower carbon footprint than importing foreign oil and gas. Many of them have articulated this over the years, but they have a clear scepticism on the facts of climate change, seen as mostly as a giant conspiracy, and often talking about the points of international campaign to cast doubt on climate change and rubbish any measures it attempts to address. And you'll forgive me if I doubt that the carbon footprint of oil and gas is not a real concern here. The floods in Pakistan are receding, and as 30 million people's lives are devastated, sceptics on climate get bolder in their claims and in their denial. The truth is, they could live to see historic droughts and storms, but they could also deny the evidence in front of them. The hysteria regarding energy security is similar to that of using a good crisis in the case of the war in Ukraine. To listen to the hysterical thought that the Brits might cut us off and our reliance on one pipe, you'd think that we got gas from a small pipeline that could fail any second if Liz Truss decided to turn it off. Repeatedly over the years, the reliance on British gas has been held up as a reason for not finding our own oil and gas. But I'll repeat again, and many have confirmed that this is the case. There is no threat to our gas supplies from Britain. Reliance on Britain would only be replaced by reliance on North American frack gas.
Van outside, an old diesel guzzling van you're driving every day of the week. You forget that.
If you have an option to respond later on.
You couldn't respond to her.
There is no threat to our gas supplies from Britain. Reliance on Britain would only be replaced by reliance on North American frack gas or LNG from Qatar or some other similar dictatorship. I am in favour of eliminating our reliance on British and North Sea gas. The quicker we do it, the better, but not to replace it with reliance on a different source of oil or gas. The war in Ukraine is being used by global fossil fuel interests to row back on climate action and to further develop new streams of oil and gas across the planet. The devastation of that will outlive the devastation of the war and will cost even more suffering. And lastly, I want to look at what would address the energy price crisis and the things we need to do to help ordinary people. This Saturday, I will join with tens of thousands of others from trade unions, senior citizens, retired workers, students, dozens of homeless groups, groups representing lone parents, NGOs across Ireland will be marching at 2:30 from Parnell Square and demanding meaningful action, including price controls, including rent controls, including increases for workers to match inflation and including increases for social protection to match inflation. Nobody should be cut off this winter for being unable to pay their bills. And as we say and have repeatedly said, there should be no further connections to data centres in this state, which is way over the top in its usage of energy. Meaningful action would mean moving away from the market and moving away from deregulation and the liberalisation of energy. That happened in the 80s, 90s and in the early 2000s. Meaningful action would mean reversing the decades of that dogma which replaced the profits of a few above the interests of many. I hope the deputies behind this motion will join us and demand real action on the crisis that we really do face.